trying to figure out how I'm going to be able to continue to provide health care for my employees is going to be a challenge.
It'll be less money off my paycheck to help pay for people who don't have health insurance.
Being someone who is working just part-time on minimum wage, I cannot afford health care. I barely make ends meet as it is. So I believe they're very wrong in what they have done.
Okay, now you're getting the beginning of the digestion of people as to, okay, this thing's going to be around. Maybe I better learn what's actually in this thing. Can the education of a nation, and that's the job of the president, let's face it, can that happen between now and November? Does the president just basically, not spike the ball and say this is terrific and move on to issue number one, the economy? Well, it'll be interesting what the White House decides to do. But as you can see, a lot of reaction to this. And we got jammed phone lines every time we talk about this subject this week. So I want to get to a couple, let you sound off. And again, we have Sean Patrick Maloney, who is a candidate for New York's 18th Congressional District, here with us as well, along with Dominic and Andrew. Guys, jump in. Let's start off with Maxine. She's calling us from Philly. Thanks for holding, Maxine. What did you make? What was your reaction after the ruling yesterday?
Actually, I was pleased to hear it, and yet I'm still kind of weighing things. But one thing I will say is that one issue I have is calling it Obamacare. I really wish they would just stop calling it that, because it's insulting. I mean, it's health care reform. And when I look at people like Romney, who 4 years ago, in a speech that I actually heard today on the radio, he was in agreement with the mandate. And his universal health care, he's still using it. It's still being used in Massachusetts from when he was governor. And here he is opposing it. I just think it's just very disingenuous of him to even do that. I mean, and some of the white stations are pulling out a lot of propaganda, telling people, just to drum up support. They're telling people that if they don't take part in purchasing insurance by 2014.
Well, you know what it all comes down to, Maxine, is this is one of those, we say it all the time, but I mean this one more than anything. You got to do your own homework on this. It's hard, but people, I'm sorry, you got to read this stuff and figure out what's right. And we even saw Andrew today, sitting lawmakers saying that they were, I saw some folks, some conservatives, Dom, saying, hey, we might have to consider removing Justice Roberts from the bench here. I mean, there's some crazy stuff that's floating around. And it's by part, I mean, the partisanship has gotten real bad here. I don't know why this guy wants to go there. But that said, we really have heard some really ramped up rhetoric, haven't we, around this issue?
It's scary.
Death panels, remember, and everything?
But on the, and I don't want to come across as attacking my Republican friends, but it's scary. So the Chief Justice disagrees with you, and there are people actually calling for his removal. Isn't it his job to judge the law based on the best way he sees fit? So because he went against your agenda, are you saying that the Supreme Court is really about agendas?
I think they'd find a lot of bipartisan support, by the way, if they wanted to get rid of Chief Justice
So
Roberts.
let's be clear, though. Let's be honest for a second. If I asked 100 Democrats here at 10:14 before the ruling came down what they thought of Justice Roberts, somewhere with Genghis Khan, and he'd be in there. All of a sudden he comes down and now he's the reason Chief Justice. So I think there's enough agendas going on.
And as for calling it Obamacare, the Obama White House embraced that term. I mean, it had been a derogatory term, and around March of this year, I think when the Supreme Court got the case, they started embracing it and calling it themselves Obamacare.
Rich, I just want to make this one point. You're quoting the polls that show most Americans don't support this. Remember, this is a huge change. People only know health care basically one way. And so we're changing a fundamental system. And so I venture to say that as people become more and more familiar with this, the dynamics are going to change rapidly.
And I have a question. A big part of last year, we covered it so much on this, was the Occupy movement. And the whole premise that there was unequal distribution of funds in this country, and the have and have-nots, the gap just too wide. To me, a lot of this debate that we were even having here was, why should some folks have to provide health insurance for other folks? Why is there a compact that we need to have in this country? They didn't use the words, but that was what a lot of this was. Now, we all know how things get branded. We know how the Occupy movement got branded as well. How do you navigate that in a very mixed district? It's not a blue, it's not a red district. I won't bore everybody with the whole history of the district over the election years, but Do you touch on that, the inequities? Do you risk turning people off, that they'll brand you socialist if you even bring up the subject? How do you work in the fact that too much concentration of wealth in too few hands and things are just too tough for too many people?
Well, you know, when Lyndon Johnson wanted to pass the Voting Rights Act, somebody said to him, "It'll destroy you." And he said, "Well, what the hell's the presidency for?" And I think the fact of the matter is you don't go down to Washington to duck or to play politics. You go down to solve people's problems, and you go down to do the very best you can and to try to tell people why you're doing it. And that's all I'm going to do. What I hear every day is that working and middle class people are getting squeezed every single way imaginable. They are making less, they are working harder. They are
So
paying.
is the remedy raising taxes on the top end?
Look, I think I worked for Bill Clinton for years on the White House senior staff in the 90s. What did President Clinton do? Because we faced a lot of the same problems then we face now, right? Remember what he did? What he did was he raised taxes on the very wealthiest just a little bit. He made them pay a little bit more, you bet. And he also cut waste and he cut government spending. He also invested in infrastructure and education. And they said he did it without a single Republican vote, you might remember. And they said the sky was going to fall, it was going to destroy the economy. A lot of the same stuff we hear today. And what happened? We had the longest period of economic expansion in American history. 20 million new jobs, record surpluses, paid down the deficit to zero, and we were paying down the debt. So I hear these guys running around talking about our debt. We were paying it down at the end of the Clinton administration, and we ought to do that again. So one of the things, I am very proud to have Bill Clinton support in this race because we know what works, and we ought to start doing what works.
I can hear, though, Nan Hayworth, the congressman's going to say, see, my big government guy here, wasting money, put it in the hands of the people and let them figure out how to spend it, keep it out of the government hands. Just yet another example here, get behind Obama.
Rich, I just told you when President Clinton left office, we were running record surpluses, paying down the debt. And after 8 years of George Bush, they blew it. What they did was they gave the biggest tax cuts in the world to people who didn't need them. They paid for a huge prescription drug benefit that a lot of us supported, but they borrowed the money to do it. They paid for 2 wars by not paying for them. They borrowed the money to do that. And that put us so far in the hole that when the recession hit, which, by the way, hit because a lot of people in the Bush administration were asleep at the switch when they should have been policing these guys on Wall Street, we were in no position to do anything about it. So when I hear these guys talk about deficits and debt, I just think we got to look at the record. And the fact of the matter is that we know what works to grow this economy, create jobs, pay down the deficit, pay down the debt. We have been here before.